So
top of the world.
How did you go from getting a bow, teaching yourself how to shoot it, getting a deer, to going and wearing a USA tracksuit and wandering off to the Paralympics? That's a pretty epic.
So after I shot the deer, I was of course excited. I wasn't gonna go. I was gonna put the bow up. I now had food on the table, and now I am going to go try to find a job. And I had a buddy of mine go, "You're pretty good at that." In a very short amount of time, in a matter of a couple months, like every time we shoot, you're out shooting me. He's like, you should go to a tournament. And I Googled archery tournaments close by, and there was one maybe 3 hours from my house. And I'm like, I'm just going to go there and see what it's about, is what I was doing. I walked in the door and immediately fell in love with, because I'm always competitive. I immediately fell in love with that sport, because I'll tell you why. Archery doesn't stereotype the athlete. Most sports do. If you're a basketball player, you got to be a certain height and be able to dunk and jump a certain height. If you're a football player, same thing. So, like pretty much all the sports, except for archery. The bow doesn't care if you have arms or don't have arms. And I could sit in a chair and shoot this bow with the best in the world and beat them. Like it had me hooked. If I was a catfish, I would have swallowed the hook. Like, it had me good. Like, I immediately knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah, because there's no judgment from the bow or the arrow. It's just, can you get it closest to the center of the target, yes or no? That's all there is, really.
Right. Yeah. I found that target archery made me a better hunter. And hunting made me, in fact, a lot of people, I don't know. I tried to explain this once, but being a hunter as well as a target archer, they both help each other. When you're in the woods, you usually only have one shot, and you have to make it count. Right? Like, you don't get 500 shots at the same. If you do, that's pretty rare. But and when you're shooting for a medal or a prize for money or something like that, like, you got to make that shot count, right? So they coexist really well. Another thing that I found out that helps me is a lot of people get like buck fever, or they get the adrenaline pumping, and here comes a big deer. And I was able to control that in the woods. So now when I'm shooting, I'm able to control it at a tournament. And then at a tournament, since I'm controlling it, when I go back out in the woods later in the year, I can control it. Like, I've been there. Like, there's so many things, and they both help me and benefit what I do, I guess.
That's so funny, because for all sorts of reasons, I went hunting for the first time in my life last year, in September last year. And it was all sorts of reasons, like somebody challenged me that every time you're eating a steak, you're pulling the trigger on a cow. So are you really man enough to pull the trigger? That was the sort of conversation. And I'm like, well, I suppose there's only one way to find out. And I'm stood there with a rifle in the back of a truck with a tripod on the roof of the truck. And there's a kudu, which is a big deer, a little bit smaller than a moose, about 300 yards away. And the sensation going through my body was exactly the same as a kayaking race just before the gun goes bang. There was dry mouth, funny heart rate that you can't quite get to grips with. It was this exact same sensation. And so I could see how the two can link together so easily for you.
I think that's why I was able to excel as fast as I did, because I started literally shooting in 2010, and in fact, it was October. And I went to my first tournament January of 2011, and went to trials to see if I got to go to London and beat everybody on the team and missed the world record by like 2 points, and went on in 2012 to go to London, right? Like, that's like almost unheard of. But I think it's because I think it's just because I grew up how I grew up. And here's another interesting thing is, since I was born this way, my whole life I've had people like look at me. It doesn't matter what I do. If I'm at a restaurant, people are staring, looking, and so at probably 6 or 7, at that point, I didn't care what people thought. I just was me. I didn't let any of that bug me. I didn't care that people watched. I didn't care that people were pointing and saying stuff behind my back. Like, I just didn't care. So now when I'm on the range and I'm shooting and there's 10,000 people watching, I don't hear him. I don't see him. Whereas the guy beside me has never been in my situation. Now all of a sudden he has 10,000 people looking at him. You see? And so he's in a whole new scenario he's never been in before, where I've been in that my whole life.